Hello, this is Jared. I'm playing Oxygen Not Included. Starting off showing off in Radioactive Asteroid Field. So it has uranium ore and bleach stone, so it's going to be a source of that in the future. In this episode, I'm going to do a bit more of a review on the base as a whole, rather than concentrating on new projects. So let's start with oxygen. You can see I've got this polluted water to oxygen system. It's not doing a whole lot there. It's quite cool, which is nice. But my main source of oxygen is this water to oxygen based system. I've got these two electrolyzers, 4 pumps, and a system for cooling, as well as a system for handling the excess hydrogen that comes out of that. So that gives me 2 lines that is full of oxygen, and that's meeting all my needs for the base at the current rate. So that's looking quite healthy, and I'm distributing that all across this base, but I'm also sending it to the other world. This is the inverted world here for the few dupes that are over there. They don't have to provide their own oxygen. They're able to get it from here. So that's oxygen. Let's look at food. Still producing quite a bit of pips. That's producing barbecue meat, which is nice, but that's actually not the primary source of food. Higher quality food is pepper bread, and I'm getting that with Sleet Wheat and peppers. And I have automation that both provides inputs to that, so that's dirt and phosphorus, but it also takes the outputs, the actual cooking ingredients, and sends that down to a fridge area, actually a deep freeze area, so it'll last forever. So it'll go through this zone, freeze off, and then stay in this storage area until it goes through the cooking range and then stored up there. So it can see both pepper bread and barbecue meat, and that'll last forever until one of the dupes decides to eat it. Currently, 700,000 calories of food. So we're looking pretty decent, both a high quality food and definitely not going to have any dupes starve. Taking a look at power, I'm producing a lot of power from hot magma, also cooling off that magma so I can use that space much further down the line. But really, this is my main source of power. It's a nuclear power plant. I have an excessive amount of steam turbines running. So there is no shortage of power. That's able to also provide a lot of rad bolts for my use. And on top of that, you can see I've got solar panels wherever I can. So tons and tons of power. The next thing to look at is heat management, because if things start to get too hot, things could be falling apart. So I have a few warm zones, but overall the base is quite cold, which is quite unusual actually, but I hand that credit to the fact that I've got 2 geysers that are producing a lot of cold liquids, and I'm making use of that by distributing those different cold zones to the areas that produce heat, such as the oxygen generation areas and the top of steam turbines, making sure they all are cool. So that's looking actually surprisingly really well. The next thing to look at is the living quality, and that's not the best. In particular, decorations and the recreational rooms. I do have a great hall and some washrooms, and enough to sort of keep them from being stressed out. But this is definitely an area that needs improvement. One of my long-term goals is to have actual natural sleet wheat. So just wild sleet wheat plants here. So I don't need to produce the dirt and have dupes waste time in farming. I'll be able to have all sleet wheat grow here. And in order to do that, I'm initially having to produce ice. So starting that process and eventually have a lot of sleet wheat. For research, I have researched a lot of things. I just have some of the more advanced stuff, and I'm very close to getting that. So there's not a lot more for me to do in the research space, but I'll work on monuments for the next research item. I've just enabled another set of steam turbines. This time it's on the far right. It's going to produce a little bit more power and provide a little bit of cooling to that hot magma so I can use that space. Not that it's a lot of space down there, but I figured I might as well do this now because it's going to take a very long time to cool this process. So there it is, the same as it system is on the left side. I've got 2 steam turbines, an aqua tuner to keep the top of the steam turbines cool. Notice that I put some insulation underneath it. That's pretty important because that's going to allow water to land on it and maintain the temperature of the aqua tuner. I could have alternatively put the aqua tuner in a closed system outside of this, but because this is kind of a temporary system, once that hot mega cools down, this won't be used. I figured, you know what, this is going to be good enough. And you can see a brine line going around. That's what is going into the aqua tuner for cooling and going on top of those steam turbines to make sure that that temperature does not get above 100 degrees. So more power, not that to be honestly, probably not the right priority given the fact that I didn't need it, but I just figured I'll start this process now because it's going to take a very long time to cool this bottom area down, and eventually I'll be able to build stuff much further in the future. Found one critical mistake. This is actually in the inverted world. I built an aqua tuner out of copper, probably because there wasn't enough steel there, and you can see it broke, so I'm just putting an entry. Alright, so now that I have an entryway that goes in here, I can actually create an aqua tuner. This time I'm going to make it out of steel. Absolutely essential that it is made out of steel this time. That way it can withstand the heat that's going to be inside this zone. And I'll even keep this area that the dupes can go into accessible in case I ever need to go in here again. The other thing is, because I drilled down the top in the past, I need to put some brine or other liquids on top of the steam turbine to make sure that heat goes into that and I can maintain its temperature so it doesn't go above 100 degrees and shut off. This is an exciting moment. I'm starting to plant my first wild sleet wheat with pips. So I have this little room area where I dump some pips into, I dump some sleet wheat. What I'm doing now is I'm building ladders out of obsidian. And because I have this little room where all the obsidian exists, if I close this, meaning dupes can't access any obsidian, I go back here, they're not actually going to build those. The only purpose of this ladder is directing the pip to actually build or plant something on that one specific tile right here. And I want to plant from here left to right and then down. And if I do that, I'll be able to put it in all these spots such that they'll be close as possible. We are now watching the pip plant the first wild sleet wheat in this world, right in the exact location I want it, on ice that I produced. And the hot, or cool rather, ethanol that's going around here is going to make sure that the temperature is maintained so that the ice doesn't melt and the sleet wheat is happy growing at the appropriate temperature. That sleet wheat is going to take a very long time to grow, but if I continue this process, planting it from on this particular tile and continuing on till I get hundreds of this thing, I'll be able to actually produce enough so I don't have to farm any sleet wheat and use any resources. So it'll take a bit, but this is looking like a good start. So I'll be keeping a close eye on this zone, and then the moment I realize a plant exists in the spot that I want it to, I delete or I cancel the ladder so the pips will continue on. A little bit further in the future now, I have a total of 12 sleet wheat, wild sleet wheat growing, which is excellent. Now that this zone is done, I can wrangle all these pips, destroy some of the stuff here I don't need. They'll go down to this room down below, and I'll continue the process down there until I have about 200 or so sleet wheat. And my goal is to have enough sleet wheat to produce pepper bread for 20 dupes in my base long term. And the really nice thing is that I won't have to have input resource such as dirt and all that. So notice that I put the obsidian access for my dupes. That's going to allow me to build or at least put the planning towards these obsidian ladders. I'm going to fill all the spots where I want my pips to not plant anything. So I've got that, and the moment I have that, all I need to do now, and a little pip squeak in the way, oh well, I'm going to close that room. That's going to prevent the dupes from accessing the obsidian. Now that's just going to essentially be markers for the pips to not build or not plant anything. Going to finish things off by showing off the new oxygen and cooling system that I've built. So this one actually is going to output 3 lines of oxygen as its own dedicated cooling system, so I can actually control the exact temperature of the oxygen that goes out. And this will be enough oxygen for 20 dupes that I'll have in the future.